don't know much about Kohrek. His best race time so far in the tournament is a 1:41.02, and his standing is currently 59. So he's a little bit behind Darkmind, but we've seen many upsets, and as most of you who have watched the tournament will know, deaths in certain places will definitely cause issues and will cause big time losses, and that time can definitely be made up. So looks like our racers have gotten started here, just mashing through some text, and we're off through the escape segment. So racers have readied up. Kohrek wants us to send help, but I think he'll be doing just fine on his own here as they make their way to the castle courtyard and into the castle. So not much really to say during escape as they both fall down into the area where the uncle is to grab the sword. But yeah, not much other than movement tech here. We don't have any items. We get the boomerang, but it's scarcely used. There's no boots, nothing other than the sword to kind of maybe deal with enemies that are in our way. Otherwise, you just have to move around them. The biggest thing in escape is the movement, like I was saying. You just have to make sure you don't move too much one way as you're walking towards the door, so you don't have to come back the other way. And a lot of it is the RNG factor, like those green guards in that room just there. This room coming up that they're in right now is the first room of note where there's kind of a little trick. You'll see Darkmind did the left slash, whereas Kohrek did the up slash. Two different strats. The left slash is slightly faster, but it's very, very, very minimal time difference. So either one of those is obviously acceptable, and they both get through the room cleanly. But you'll see on Darkmind's screen, it's a little bit more noticeable. He's doing some pumping, and basically all that is mashing the controller in a perpendicular direction whenever your movement is up or left, and that actually causes you to be able to move a little bit faster. So the boomerang, a couple rooms ago, that's another room where there's a little bit of technical movement there, and now we have the ball and chain guard. This is the biggest pain point at this point in the segment. Let's see, they both go for the 8/ strat. Both have a little bit of trouble, but nothing crazy. Darkmind loses a heart. Kohrek had a couple of clinks of the sword, it looked like, but pretty clean overall for both of them. And there we go. They both collect the lamp. Darkmind talks to Zelda before collecting the lamp. Kohrek collects the lamp and then talks to Zelda. That's actually preferred, because then you don't have to worry about the human error frames between canceling the text box from Zelda and opening the chest. So you want to open the chest first. Say goodbye to the downtown kids. Darkmind says, see you later. Kohrek says, hey, bye. And now we're, just going on through. So nothing crazy difficult, nothing flashy, no tech really, other than movement in the rest of the segment. As our runners make their way to the sewer segment. Sewer segment is the dark segment of the escape. There's rats and snakes that like to move quickly and randomly, so it's just all about reaction time and hopefully getting the best RNG to get through the rooms quickly.
I hope it's okay if I join you here. Two bros sick.
Oh my goodness. That's a voice I have not heard in some time. I got Scudge with me now. How's it going, Scudge?
Oh, you gave away my secret identity.
Oh no, I didn't know the secret. I got Toby Crackett here with me.
Yeah.
How's it going, Toby?
Going pretty good. I'm excited to see these guys kill some rats and snakes and whatnot.
Yeah. Dark Mind made it through cleanly in the snake room. Kohrek has a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, I think the snake room really exemplifies one of the most important aspects of this game that's prevalent throughout, which is that almost every room has at least some consequential randomization. And one of the hallmarks of the top players is their ability to mitigate the consequences from that randomization.
Yeah, definitely. So we see Dark Mind gets a decent key rat RNG as well. Unfortunately, Kohrek gets top left. And as you just saw, he throws the boomerang the first time, and it just bounces off the wall instead of collecting the key, which is something you gotta watch out for, but he reacts quickly and gets the key just afterwards.
Yep. Sometimes when you do get the northwest key rat, you can throw the boomerang at the rat to stop it early so it doesn't get all the way up to the top corner. Then you're able to collect the key a little bit more quickly.
And Dark Mind is through, as well as Kohrek just finishing up in about 6. Dark Mind looked like a 554, 555.
Not bad.
Pretty solid.
The sub 6 minute escape is one of the first threshold times that most players try to accomplish in their runs. A chest turn. If you're going to get the Sanctuary Heart,
Ooh.
might as well do a chest turn.
You might as well save a frame.
Wow. All right, that 1 rupee advantage that Dark Mind Demon has so far might come into play later. Did you happen to see if that came from a prize pack drop or a bush?
I actually did not notice where the green.
I'm gonna guess it came from a bush because usually it does. Probably right outside of Link's house.
Yeah. Overworld movement here. Just watching out for Kohreks and. Kohreks. As not to be confused with Kohrek.
Right.
Just they move quickly, they shoot quick projectiles, so it's just a matter of keeping track of them. We know where they usually are, so for the experienced runners, it's not as big of a deal, but you can end up in really awkward situations at times.
Yep.
Like
some of the Octorops, they stop and they only shoot once, and some of them will always shoot 4 times, once in every direction. And knowing that can actually help you to predict when, not necessarily where, but when they're going to move. That can help to plan your actions a little bit better.
Alright, so both in Eastern Palace right now. Dark Mind's coming up on the first bit of tech in this dungeon in a couple rooms. The Stalfos room, we manipulate the spawns of the skeletons so that only 2 will spawn in the room, and then we actually kill them before you even see them. So, yeah, performed cleanly right there. And Kohrek coming up on that now.
Yeah, these are also the first potential for drops from the what we call the Variety Prize Pack, which has a whole bunch of different items, including rupees, hearts, magic bombs, and arrows. And the position of that prize pack can determine whether or not you can get a good drop later, potentially. Since DMD already got 2 drops there, the next drop from that pack is going to be a heart, and after that it's going to start being good stuff, like arrows.
Yeah, I said, it's funny you just mentioned that, because I remember a month or so ago, you can tell you're a good runner of this game when you're more worried about arrow drops than you're worried about heart drops.
Yeah.
To me, that's like a telltale sign.
Yeah, for sure. Big key skip here, little damage boost to get through that anti-fairy circle early, pick up that pot. Well executed from Dark Mind Demon. Ideally, you'll take a heart and a half of damage there from damage boosting off the Popo, but you can take 2 hearts as well by doing a slightly easier variation and doing the first damage boost off the anti-fairies themselves. Alternatively, there's a very rare lucky frame roll that can happen where you end up only taking half a heart of damage total. But you can't really plan for that. It's just something that happens by pure luck, very rarely.
Yeah, I actually got that a few weeks ago when I was playing the game, and I didn't know it was possible, so I was so confused that I just kept walking. I was like, why didn't I take a heart? But yeah, again, like you said, you can't really account for frame rule stuff, so.
Yeah. It looks like one variation we've seen between them is that Kohrek, I believe, got the optional arrow pot earlier, and Darkmind Demon skipped that, which means he's going to need to rely on getting at least one arrow drop from these red Igors that he's going to kill in the next 2 rooms. It's possible he can get up to 2.
A little bit of funky movement there caused him to shoot that second arrow late on the red Igor, so he had to wait a cycle. And he's going to walk right on by that red rupee drop.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It might not have been worth it to go that far out of your way to get it, but it does suck to have to watch it as you move into the next room. DMD is doing a less common Armo strategy. This is an old Yuzuhara Taz strat that most people didn't really think was possible in real time for a long time. But I will say, in my own experience, it is a little bit easier than people thought, but it's definitely not an easy strat. I shouldn't say easier, I should say more possible than people thought. Because there are a few players who can do it with relative consistency. Kohrek going for a more traditional strategy, but having a little more trouble.
Right. He gets the red Armos, but is able to clean it up quickly because he did have the extra arrows, so doesn't lose too much time there.
Yeah, even with that, he's still exiting the dungeon with more arrows total than Darkmind Demon. And more rupees, though neither of them are quite where they want to be. From drops, you want to have a minimum of 14 rupees to be really comfortable, but technically you don't really need any at all because there are enough backup options before you actually need to spend the rupees.
Looks like Darkmind has a little bit of trouble with the first spin speed. Again, spin speed is a frame perfect trick that there's a specific technique where you hold out your sword and then tap A on the frame after holding out your sword. Ooh, it looks like we're having some issues with Kohrek, so we'll try to figure out what that problem is, but continue to see how Eddie's doing. But again, there's a specific tech there that everyone uses, but it's not 100%, and it's one of those things that I don't think anyone will ever be 100% with spin speed.
Now, unfortunately, even if your physical technique is perfect, you can't really account for things like how late in the frame your inputs are, because technically, you know, real time and gameplay frame rates are not synchronized. So you can technically do it on the beginning or end of a frame. You can hit an input. So even if your timing is 100% consistent, there can still be a slight variance to the results.
Right.
We're going to assume that Kohrek got the super speeds perfectly, and he's on his way to the library now.
Oh, there we go.
And they'll be heading to the Desert Palace. The desert is located directly next to a wetland. And based on the Hyrulean geology, I'm going to assume that there's some sort of magical purpose for this, because geologically it's not very logical. Not a terribly difficult dungeon itself. Mainly they're going to just be focusing on optimizing movement, very similar to Escape in Eastern in that regard, except with the additional dynamic of having the ability to dash until they get to the boss fight, and then the whole thing gets turned upside down.
Yeah, that Lamo is the most difficult boss fight in the Light World, and arguably one of the most difficult boss fights to do quickly in the whole game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, depending on who you ask, you'll hear either Lamola's Aghanim 2 or Ganon, probably the hardest fights to do consistently fast.
Right. But as you said, both runners are low on rupees. There is a backup in this dungeon just before you get the gloves, and there's a bunch of popos too that if you get lucky, maybe they'll drop a couple rupees right in front of you too.
Right.
But as dungeons go, like you said, there's nothing really flashy here. Most of the other dungeons have some sort of tech or some sort of room that's a little more difficult or has a little bit of tough execution involved, but this dungeon's just a lot of dashing and collecting keys, collecting items, and then going to the boss.
Yeah, Yeah, they're going to collect a lot of arrows. The normal route to the dungeon, I think, gives you 20 extra arrows, and then there's 5 optional before the boss. I think with the amount Darkmind Demon has going into it, he'll have 22. He will probably pick up those arrows, but Kohrek will have a few more, so he may choose to skip them.
Yeah, and Darkmind also decides to pick up that backup arrow pot that I mentioned before the gloves, so he puts himself in a position to, you know, if he has to get all the backups, he'll be fine, but hopefully he'll get a couple of drops so he can skip 1 or 2 along the way.
Yeah, it would be nice if you got a couple of green drops, like from bushes or something, and goes out of his way to get them. It's always a fun thing to see. Very dangerous super speed he's trying here. Pause buffer makes it a little bit safer because you can check your position and stop your movement and prevent yourself from falling off.
Yeah, and falling off there is very easy and loses a lot of time, so not many people go for that without the pause buffer, and I think Darkmind did use the pause buffer there, so.
Yeah. Little RNG to these popos. Sometimes they can flee to the distant corners without any ranged weapons to use to help you. You do have to chase them down.
Kohrek on the safer dash option in the overworld screen there. It doesn't lose that much time, so it's not a big deal.
Darkmind Demon is confident that he's not going to use too many arrows on Lamolas, going in with only 22.
Wow.
If you use only arrows and never miss, you have to use a minimum of 12. But it's pretty rare to only use 12 in this fight. Though with some slashes and good execution, maybe he'll keep it pretty well reduced. Pretty good first cycle, second not going as well. A couple of long jumps, though, gives him a lot of opportunity to get a few extra hits in.
Yeah. Dang.
Taking a few hits to the body.
They all kind of jumped up in the same spot, so.
Yeah. He was keeping track of their HP there, too, so he was aware that that slash was going to be enough to kill it.
Right.
That's another thing you notice, mostly in high-level players. It can be very difficult to keep track of which one specifically has taken which amount of damage.
And with that, Darkmind's through in about 17:12, which is pretty solid time up through that segment.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've only gotten a time about that good a couple times in my entire career.
Yeah, it's rare in general. I mean, obviously the top runners do it more consistently, but getting low 17 at the end of Desert is very fast. And Kohrek makes it through. Darkmind making use of the few arrows that he has to get that little green enemy out of the way before fake flippers. Oh, that was bad fake flipper RNG, but he's fast enough to avoid the soft lock.
Yeah, that's about the scariest thing that can happen, is to have that Zora spawn right on that whirlpool. If you're confident with your movement, correct movement should get there before the Zora spawns every time. But of course, if you get just a little bit nervous, or if your movement is just a little bit poor, you may find yourself either dodging very scarily, or in big trouble.
Yeah, a lot of runners might even just swim completely out of the way to give them enough time to dodge the projectile and then get safely into the whirlpool. For
sure. That crab was coming up right behind him. That was kind of scary.
Yeah, that made me nervous. Kohrek gets a little better RNG there, but his movement also was fast enough before the Zora spawned.
And with that, they're going to be entering Tower of Hera. It looks like the same ammunition and resource count. Same rupees and arrows. Oh, wait, never mind. Kohrek got a lucky one drop from that crab. If he waited a second longer, he would have got another and would have had the preferable amount of 14, but the time it takes to wait for that might not have been worth it.
Right. But you do have to walk a little bit out of your way to get that extra blue rupee, so...
That's true. Never would have thought of that as an effective backup, but maybe...
I'm sure the time saver loss is actually pretty minuscule because he shoots them out, those green rupees out pretty quickly, so... If you're in that specific situation, maybe.
I'm gonna put that in my notes. Dark Mind Demon has made it into the Tower of Hera, the last of the primary light world dungeons. Completing this dungeon will allow them to acquire the Master Sword, the Sword of Evil's Bane, and challenge Aghanim. Death Mountain's really scary going up. Looked like DMD lost a couple hearts there, and Kohrek lost a couple, in addition to the ones that he lost from the overworld. Not in too dangerous of a spot going in with 3, but I'd rather be going in with 5 or 6.
Yeah, the more experienced you are with the dungeon, the less you worry about hearts, but there are really tricky spots like this room here that Dark Mind is in. If you lose your focus for a second, one of those tiles can hit you. There's the Beetle's room that can be tough to navigate. So, and obviously all the Moldorms can just decide to ruin your day. So it can be pretty tricky.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of enemies here are doing 1 heart of damage. There's also 1 intentional damage boost in this dungeon, so you need to at least have a spare heart for that. That, of course, is the bomb jump, which DMD will be making his way up towards soon.
Unfortunate death there by Kohrek, and that just goes to show you the RNG from the Moldorm, and then the Dodongo was firing smoke, or firing smoke, was shooting fire in his way, and bad RNG again from that Moldorm. So
yeah, I will say though, as far as deaths go, dying in the same room that you're going to respawn in is probably less costly than almost any other option.
Yeah, he only lost a few seconds there, less than 10 for sure.
DMD coming into this bomb jump here. It's going to use a little trick with a spin here. The way the physics works, you can't really fall while you're charging the spin if you're holding against the pit. But the movement that you can do while you're charging the spin stops as soon as you're on the edge of the pit. So we take advantage of that to line up that pixel perfectly and automatically.
Yeah, that's a fairly new thing that I've seen people implementing. Was that found recently?
Yeah, it's fairly recently. I think it was found by the randomizer community.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of more improvised or random bomb jumps when you're doing something like randomizer. So there aren't consistent setups for all of them. So finding little tricks like that has helped a lot with the consistency for the players that have learned them.
That's a good point. It's pretty cool.
A little scary at the end of Moldorm there, but overall it was a good fight for Dark Mind Demon. Can be one of the scariest fights, especially for new players, because the risk from mistakes can be so large. Being the only fight that you can accidentally leave the arena during the fight and then have to restart the whole thing.
Yeah, the randomness of Moldorm, especially that last phase when he's moving extra fast, can be pretty scary, but Dark Mind cleans it up. Kohrek's coming up on the bomb jump now. I guess now's a good time to talk about tree rupees, huh?
Yeah. Would you like to take care of that? Sure.
Oh no, Kohrek isn't lined up quite properly, so he's going to drop down back to the main floor and have to make his way back up the tower. It's going to be around here.
1 pixel too low, in fact. Just 1.
So, Dark Mind only has 12 rupees here, so he's going to collect 3 of these. And then he'll collect all of the red rupees in the next tree, and he should be okay once he does that. So the way the tree rupees work is the first tree that you pull on will give you 4 blue rupees, as you just saw. And then as long as you kill 4 enemies and don't take damage before pulling on the next possible rupee tree, then it will give you 4 red rupees, and that's where we get most of the money that we need before the Dark World, which we'll use to get Kiki the monkey to follow us and then eventually open the dungeon itself.
Saw Kohrek dash into that wall there. That actually expands the window of pixels that you can be on the x-axis specifically to do that bomb jump. Triples them, actually.
Yeah, so I guess going back to the tech that Dark Mind used with the spin, that automatically puts you on the last pixel, I believe, or one of the last 2 pixels, so you know for sure that you'll make the jump.
Yeah.
Oh, if you line up that way, then the bonk helps to ensure that you won't have a problem. And oh, Kohrek gets middle
Painful fall
hold.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you dash through Moldorm, unfortunately, there's really no way to know for sure if the dash is going to be safe. It's not really a consistent option, and damage boosts from Moldorm can be really inconsistent too. That's the most painful fall that there is, unfortunately, because you have to fall 2 floors. It's not as costly as falling at the bomb jump, though, to be honest.
Yeah. Falling at the bomb jump, having to meter back out.
Oh, wow.
Oh no, he jumps down and Moldorm is in pretty much the exact position where he won't clink off of.
Oh man. Yeah, this is why the Tower of Hera is often the bane of a lot of runners' careers.
And Moldorm especially is so unpredictable at certain points, and it looked like he was going up to the top of the room, and then he just circled straight back down as Kohrek was falling. So
yeah,
he could be very tough to deal with and predict.
Yeah, to have factors so unpredictable whose consequences can be so significant, makes it let's say a quote fun end quote dungeon. Oh,
that's a definition of fun, I guess.
That's kind of nice, I guess. Looking on the bright side, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Darkmind Demon has entered Aghanim's tower using the Master Sword to unlock that first door.
For those who were paying attention to Darkmind before, there's the first 2 guards in the dungeon. We usually use a few arrows, but he's so low on arrows that he actually switched to using sword beams. Luckily, he has full health still.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go down below a single arrow here. He's going to pick up 5 and have 6 coming out of here. That's the least that you want to have exiting this dungeon. That's the amount exactly the amount that you need in Palace of Darkness. Yeah. So you can't make any mistakes with them even after that.
And usually in the room he's coming up on now, we like to kill these enemies with arrows because it's faster, but looks like he's going to have to just go with slashes.
Yeah. And Kohrek got his revenge on Moldorm.
Very good heads-up play there by Darkmind, getting the bad RNG from the top right red guard as it goes left, but quickly takes out the boomerang and throws it at the proper moment. That can be tricky too, because if you throw the boomerang too early or too late, then he'll either won't get hit by it or he'll be right in your way, so you can't collect the key from the guy in the middle.
Yeah,
so.
Blocking that top guard where he'll actually block the pot is really bad, but sometimes you'll miss him and you'll stun both guards, and then the guards are just in line with each other. You can't hit the bottom with the bottom one with the pot anyway. Yeah, and recovering in that room is usually a matter of honestly just panicking and just slashing as much as you can.
There's no real backup strat or any way you can react other than just making your way to the middle and trying to kill and collect the key there.
All right, DMD is going to be entering the Aghanim fight. Some people like to refer to this as a glorified cutscene, because there's very little you can do to actually optimize the fight or to change the outcome. The biggest factors that affect the timing are out of your control. They're just coin flips. But there's a little you can do to potentially mitigate the time lost from the distance that Aghanim has to warp by either hitting him towards the center or hitting him towards the top of the room when you know he's going to do a lightning attack. This position he's in right here, for example, very close to the top, so you see that short warp. One of the ways that you can actually observe how significant of a difference the timing is between different warp distances is actually just looking at the Aghanim 2 fight and seeing how desynchronized they become throughout the fight, because their patterns are exactly the same and the only difference is the distance that they warp. So you can actually see the timing difference just by looking at how desynchronized they can become just over a few cycles.
Yep. And like we said before, the Aghanim 2 fight is one of the most difficult to optimize, so that definitely comes into play.
I think that might have been just 1 blue ball. 3 is average and is most common. 1 is 18 seconds faster, so quite nice there.
Kohrek's in the tree rupee phase as he collects the mushroom, and you saw that that bird that he just killed, it can be really tough. You have to stop your dash at a certain moment to kill him, or there's a way you can start your dash at a specific location and you'll dash straight through him, but it is pretty risky, so he just goes a little safer route. kills him with the sword beams from afar.
Yep. Now we're seeing the first Dark World screens here, and immediately you're introduced with enemies that can hit you for 3 hearts of damage. With 7 hearts total, you really don't want to make any small mistakes and end up getting nearly half your hearts knocked out in 1 hit. And of course, the difficulty of the dungeon is a pretty stark increase from the previous dungeons, at least as far as hazards go. In the speed run, the Tower of Hera is obviously a very fickle dungeon, as we've seen. But the Palace of Darkness is very difficult in similar regards as well.
Yeah, Tower of Hera is strange because, especially with Death Mountain, you go in and it can be very nerve-wracking and, you know, very tough, and you know, you hate just being there the whole time. And then other times, Death Mountain will be nice to you, and then the enemies stay your way. So it's, you know, it's just so varied your experience there. But with Palace of Darkness, like you said, the enemies do a little bit more. There's another bomb jump here that's a little bit tougher, but overall, there's no real risk of taking huge amounts of damage anywhere as opposed to the Tower of Hera.
Right, yeah. There's a few places that can be a little touchy, and of course the boss is the worst of them all.
Yeah. Yeah, Helmasaur is a fun boss, but he can just give you the worst RNG. You know, and he's easy to optimize with the good RNG, and he's very, very, very difficult to do fast if you just keep getting fireballs and he doesn't like to move in good directions.
Yeah. For sure. It is also the last boss fight before the most common place to pick up safety items. So for a lot of new players who are still picking up safeties, you don't get any benefit from them in this dungeon or against this boss fight. That can make it one of the biggest challenges of the run in that regard as well. Oh, and DMD got this air glitch. Not being aware of it and recovering from it. That happens if you bonk when you're downstairs. A few other specific circumstances also come into play, like what you've done since the last time you mirrored affects it. In fact, you may have tried to recover from it and not done every step of it correctly, because there are a few steps to the recovery as well.
Oh no, then Kohrek also gets the bad RNG in that Circle of Pots room.
Yep, and slash my sword a bunch of times. Exactly what you're supposed to do in that position.
He actually recovered pretty well there, given what happened. And Dark Mind now on the bomb jump. You have to place the bomb on a specific Y pixel. Oh no, he tries to correct his positioning with sword buffers, but doesn't get to the right pixel in time and ends up having to redo the bomb jump. So he'll have to get a couple of backups unless he gets a lucky drop.
Yeah, he's trying to do it with all slash buffers. Whether you use pause buffers or slash buffers doesn't really change how much you can move at once or even the difficulty of the specific adjustments. But when you're using pause buffers, you're delaying the game time from advancing. So the bridge and the bomb explosion are delayed relative to real time, but it also loses more time in real time. So by using slash or dash buffers, you can mitigate that time loss, but you also make it a lot more risky for yourself. Nice arrow drop there. Having only 5 meant he actually didn't have as many as he needed. He must have spent 1 that I didn't notice. He should have had exactly enough. Without those, he would not have been able to get through the Mimic Room and hit the statue afterwards, as well as that switch that he just hit. Being down exactly 3 hearts means he is able to get up to full hearts, which is nice. Any more hearts lost than that is pretty consequential, because without sword beams, you have to not only waste another arrow or 2, but you have to menu up to 2 more times, which is a pretty significant time loss for players of his caliber. And it looks like he's going to have to do it anyway.
Yeah, it's unfortunate not having sword beams go into the ladder section of this dungeon.
You'll see when he goes downstairs, he's probably going to menu to the boomerang and use the boomerang on the switch in order to not waste an arrow, but then he'll have to menu an additional time back to the hammer. So a couple extra seconds in this room. Try to do the diagonal? Nah. Go for the easy, safe.
So I've already counted 4 blue balls for Kohrek, which is 3 more than Dark Mind got the entire fight. He needs to get this coin flip right here, and he should be done. And yeah, there it is. So he's going to finish with 4. Pretty unfortunate. He sits through an extra lightning cycle along with the extra blue balls he has to sit through as well. So just purely based on RNG, he loses time.
Yeah, and 4 isn't really terrible. It's not terribly worse than average luck, but it is a pretty significant time loss compared to 1. DMD, hammer in the first phase of Helmasaur, 17 hits to kill this mask. Helmasaur has a single damage pool, which means that if you do attacks that do more than 1 hit point of damage on the first phase, they can actually overkill the first phase and take health off of the second phase, but it's not a strategy you ever see people do because you'd have to pull out bombs in that first phase, and nobody wants to do that. Second phase was real risky there. Got hit multiple times. Yeah. Played it safe at the end to not die.
The whole fight really was risky. He uses a lot of runners use the sword out strat, which makes it easier to keep yourself lined up and also extends the hitbox of the hammer, if I'm not mistaken. So you can hammer him from a little bit further back, but obviously having the sword out makes you move a little bit more slowly, and you can finish off the first phase a little bit more quickly if you don't. So again, one of the strats you don't see too often, but Eddie pulls it off pretty cleanly there.
Yeah, it seems like more players are becoming confident doing the first phase without the sword out. Back in the day, it was extremely rare to see, but now there are a handful of players who will do that. One of the benefits of it is it does improve your mobility and makes dodging fireballs in the first phase a lot easier. Gives you more options to be aggressive in that regard.
Yeah, the pros and cons are very controversial, and it's, you know, it's something that people have talked about endlessly.
Oh, there's been heated debates about which one is superior before.
Amongst top runners too. Like,
yeah.
Not top runners and 130, 140, 150 runners. It's even
among
runners
like
that are all
top 3 players.
125 will have heated debates about this.
All right, Darkmind Demon finishing up. Palace of Darkness is heading out right as Kohrek is heading in. You can see the first hammer dash here. One of the coolest 1.0 glitches the first time you see it. Go across that bridge.
Yeah, that's a fun little bridge to cross right there with the hammer dash. Hammer is it's really interesting because the hammer is one of the few item dashes where the hitbox will actually extend in front of Link as he's dashing.
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, it does not work against enemies. You can't do a hammer dash and do hammer damage against enemies. It only affects tile interactions. But it will work against pretty much any tile that the hammer works on, including pots and stuff. You can hammer dash through them. DMD got the quick warp there. I don't think we explained quick warps yet. When the camera is on a specific 2-pixel wide range on the y-axis, a little calculation in the ROM there accidentally returns 0 too early and cuts the animation short by about a half a second. And throughout the whole run, there's over 20 warps that can be optimized with quick warps. So the time saved from them, if you get all of them, is over 10 seconds. For some quick warps, it's as easy as just walking into the warp from a specific direction. For anyone from the dark world to the light world, where you have to use the mirror, some of them have setups, but most of them you have to kind of just eyeball and just accurately hit them. Kohrek doing the double bomb jump as well, and the hammer jump. Probably see him use more pause buffers to adjust his pixel there. I think that's good. Ooh, no.
That made me nervous, the way he was moving there before the bomb went off. But he does get it.
Nice.
And yeah, that's the difference you were talking about before. When you use pause buffers, you can delay the bomb in the bridge, so you can kind of see where both are at. You know how much time you have left. Whereas the sword buffers, nothing stops, so you have to get in place a lot quicker.
Yeah. Alright, Kohrek unfortunately is 3.5 hearts down. There's only 3 free hearts that he can pick up in the following room, but there is a chance they can get 1 drop from Mimics to get back up to full hearts. The difference between 6.5 and 7 on the Helmasaur fight is inconsequential because all of Helmasaur's attacks do 2 hearts of damage. So 6.5 is superior to 6 in that regard, but without the sword beams, there's a few other time losses, as mentioned earlier.
Oh, and he does get the heart. Looks like he's going to pick up this arrow pot, both arrow pots there to make sure he has enough arrows going into the later segments.
Yeah, that'll give him a lot of comfort on the arrow route going forward. Darkmind Demon is still very low on arrows. He still has the potential to get a random drop from the variety pack, and there are enough backups that he'll be able to get as many as he needs, but at a small additional time loss for each additional one that he has to pick up.
Yeah, 3 is very low at this point. I feel like it's almost rare to see this few arrows at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he did go into La Mola's with only 22. And I would recommend going in with over 25 if you can, 30 preferably for most players. Top players sometimes going with 24 and they're comfortable with that, but as a coach, I would not recommend that.
Darkmind going through the Hellway, had a little bit of trouble with the RNG, as is what usually happens in that room. But now he's at the bombable floor. Ooh.
Yeah, the Hellway is pretty much the only room in this dungeon that has any real significantly consequential RNG. It's just not easily mitigated.
And it loses you several seconds depending on how bad the RNG actually is. So.
Yeah, it can be very significant. Compared to a perfect Hellway dash, the time loss can be very significant.
Yeah.
Kohrek got to the first phase of Helmsor. He's a little low on hearts, getting trapped. He's going to go for a double spin at the bottom. Only got a single spin. I think switching to arrows is a safe option.
Oh, no. There was actually a fireball off screen. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not much you can do to predict or anticipate that because you can't even see it.
And usually when the fireballs go off screen, they won't explode. They'll just be despawned. So that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely some bad luck there.
Yeah, I think he was lined up expecting the other one that was on screen to explode. And he was in position to dodge that one. So he just, since he didn't see the other one, there's no real way to predict that it was going to go off.
Well, if you want to look on the bright side, he's going to have a lot of bombs in addition to his extra arrows going forward in this run. One of the great things about Palace of Darkness is it really is the place to stock up on bombs.
Yeah,
and he's about to finish Thieves Town.
Oh, he's in blind. Wow. Collect the Maiden and got the Titan's Mitts.
One more arrow
blind
for
is a
statue.
pretty scripted fight, so
good luck. Good first two phases. In my opinion, if the first two phases go well, you can pretty much just improvise and/or panic on the third phase and still be fine. But third phase was pretty good as well. Don't want to get hit even that one time, but the consequences of that are minimal.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like, in my experience, as long as I get through the first two phases, I don't really worry about the third phase, regardless of if I make a small mistake in it or not.
Right. All right. Kohrek v. Helmsor, round 2.
Let's see if he gets... Okay, he didn't get the fireball that time, which is good. He got fireballs, I think, every time in the first fight, so already getting a bit better RNG. Going for hammers on the right side, which is a lot harder to hit. Alright,
at this point he's gonna fall back to just using the sword. Without a fireball, you can get a lot of slashes right on him real quick, real easy. He's gonna be stationary here doing a tail attack, so yeah, finish it up nice and easy.
Good stuff.
He's gonna be picking up 300 rupees. After Thieves Town, he's gonna pick up an additional 300 to this for the finale of the rupee route.
Yep, once he gets that, then we're all set on rupees for the rest of the run.
Yep.
But of course, he's got to throw a few bones to the blacksmiths before going and getting that 300 rupee chest.
Yeah. One of the things I do appreciate about this speedrun, and you may have heard me say it before, is that the safer, easier option, which is to upgrade your sword here, also is faster. I love when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually built into the route just because it does make later, mainly boss fights, a lot quicker. Like Cold Stare and Mothula.
Yeah, and most notably Ganon.
And Ganon, yeah. And it also speeds up Argus. So we get it. We actually get it before 2 bosses that you would normally have it at, and it speeds those fights up significantly. So
Right.
it's cool that it works out that way.
Yeah, since we do the dungeons out of order, the last dungeon was technically number 4, but we are going to do number 2 and 3 later. So getting the Tempered Sword before then is good. He was going to go for the fence dash there, but was quick enough to realize that he did not have the pixel boost from that slope and bailed on it instead of letting himself bonk. Great attention to detail there.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be hard to tell if you're off with that with the fence dash too. So
yeah. So bush drops in this have a sort of prize pack of their own. So while getting that skull bush there might seem really frustrating and annoying, it does guarantee that you're not going to get it in the Skullwoods overworld segment in places where it can be very dangerous. For example, if you bonk and happen to land on top of one of these ropas, you're going to be down at least 2 hearts. So that gives you confidence in your safety going through that section as well. DMD getting a little trolled by these mummies, reacting and handling it good enough.
Yeah, those mummies are annoying because the hitbox with the sword in them is kind of wonky. As you saw, there were 2 slashes that just went straight through one of the mummies, so it can be pretty tough to deal with them if they're in an awkward position.
That has something to do with the sprite interaction between the mummies and the statue, it seems. You can actually walk through the mummies sometimes when you're walking along the statue.
Wow.
I wouldn't try that in real time, but in Taz's it's...
Not a recommended strat to try to walk through enemies.
DMD going for the kind of half early bomb jump where he uses the sword spin trick from earlier to align with the pixel. Still faster than most traditional setups.
That's a very small room though, so the early bomb jump there only saves about a second versus Hera where it'll save like, I think 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, if you do it absolutely early at Hera, you can save up to 2 seconds there.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we're going to see Kohrek pick up the powder.
Yep.
After you unlock the bird, you actually can't play the flute right away, but if you charge a dash, even for 1 frame, then you can. For some reason, whatever it is, if you touch the A button at all, the countdown there just disappears and you can play it immediately.
Interesting. Alright, Darkmind has gotten the big key, and then he went and got Fire Rod, and now he's on his way to Mothula right now. It's funny because this dungeon is normally pretty confusing, but if you know your way through it, you know that there's really not much to it.
Yeah, it's very short and direct.
Yeah.
It's also segmented, which means the costs of death in the second section aren't as costly because you respawn at the beginning of the second section, like a built-in checkpoint.
Yeah, and I think, you know, depending on the skill level of the runner, I believe this is the shortest segment in the game, just for those factors.
Yeah, it's below 5 minutes and 30 seconds for the whole segment. Oh, having a tough time with the Mothula fight. Every time he hits it into the spikes, Mothula is not taking any damage, even from the sword. So I'm not even sure how many hits he's gotten so far.
Yeah.
Only needs 4 with this sword, so to give you an example of how much damage was absorbed there.
Yeah, that was tough, especially with Moth sticking to the bottom part of the screen. It can be tough to get damage on him. And on top of that, the spikes were just swarmed around him. So it was hard to even get close to him, but
yeah.
Good cleanup there. Once he went back
to
to
the top
of the room.
maneuverability.
Yeah.
To not die there. Kohrek entering Thieves Town now. That was really close. Close plus with that Jasic there.
Yeah, these guys their movement, like most other enemies, is random, so it can be annoying to have to react to where they are when you fall down.
I was getting the arrows. I thought he was going for the chest.
Oh.
Yeah, he doesn't really want to take a lot of damage here, but he does have the powder, and there are a few anti-fairies that he can use to heal up if he needs to. You mentioned the Zazik's pattern are random, but they are a little bit predictable because they always do turn their heads in the direction that they're about to move.
Right.
It's a cute thing that I think most players do observe on their own after a while, but that isn't obvious at first for new players. Same with Stalfos and same with guards, the short sword guards in Aghanim's tower.
All right, Kohrek going into the Hellway right now. Who unfortunately wasn't able to get the God Pixel, but still has a really clean second dash.
Tight though. Wow.
Yeah.
And he'll be making his way upstairs to bomb a hole in the attic. Little light in. While DMD is making his way to the flippers.
Yeah, as Kohrek is, opening up the floor and going to get the maiden, we have Darkmind, who is going on a little collecting spree before we go over to Ice Palace. The reason we do this is because there's a whirlpool in this area that takes you directly in front of the Ice Palace dungeon. So it makes the most sense to come here, collect these couple things, and then just be right in front of the dungeon.
Yeah, and it might be faster to use the flute to get up here, to get the flippers much faster, but unfortunately we do need the Quake Medallion as well. So we have to come up here in the Dark World, which makes it a pretty long detour in order to consolidate those two pickups.
Right.
The Zora's Domain here that Darkmind Demon is in has it's very difficult to optimize the movement there. So Dash went in a path that seemed like it would be suboptimal, but by moving onto the land, he increased his movement speed enough that it compensates for the additional distance that he had to move on that screen. Little things like that are real subtle things that you might pick up from watching really good players like him. All right, 500 rupees gone for those finger webs.
Which are unfortunately still necessary to do Swamp Palace.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to do fake flippers, but none of the options will actually allow you to get through Swamp Palace without the flippers.
That's the only real reason we need the flippers for this run at all.
Bad RNG for DMD on that screen, but he handled it well. 2 instances of it both handled well. And Kohrek's going to be going
use the fire rod to kill the one Zora though, so I believe he can't use it as a backup in any of the rooms in Ice Palace, or else he'll be out of.
Well, yeah, he'll need to pick up an additional magic pickup if he does. It's common to use one in this room, because any item that you use kind of gives you a speed boost on the ice. Using the sword or the hammer, you see in other parts of the dungeon. But using the fire rod is nice because you don't have to risk accidentally slashing an electrified jelly in that room. So use the speed boost that way. But he saved his magic, so he'll be fine. And Kohrek had a really good blind fight there. I think he took 1 heart of damage throughout the whole fight.
Yeah, he took a heart of damage, but he still was able to finish him off on the left side of the screen towards the top, so that's a good way to tell if he had a good fight.
Good RNG for DMD on the bomb floor room there. Stalfos have what we like to call sympathetic behavior in AI, which means that if one of them has a certain attribute, the other one maintains it, which means if one is on the ground, then both can be bombed. There's a quick kill there that we actually, unfortunately, didn't get to see from DMD. Fair enough recovery, though, I'd say. He did have to use an extra bomb. Luckily, Stalfos have a 100% chance to drop from the bomb prize pack, so he's able to recover it as well.
They're the are they the only enemy in the game that has a 100% chance to actually yield to drop?
It's any enemy in the bomb prize pack, and that includes things like slugs and Zoras. But yeah, it's the only prize pack that has a
sorry, I misworded my question, but you understood. You know what I'm saying. Yeah,
I know what you're saying. Well, he has lost a lot of hearts now. Had a little bit of a hard time in a couple of rooms in a row, and got himself down to 5. All of Coldstair's attacks do an even amount of hearts of damage, so skipping this damage boost when you have an odd amount of hearts will possibly afford you an additional hit on Coldstair. He's confident enough to take that damage boost though and go forward with exactly 4.
Yeah, with 4 hearts, Coldstair can definitely be scary, especially depending on the strat that you use, because sometimes you're putting yourself right next to him, and if for some reason a sword poke or something doesn't register, then he's right on top of you. Yeah, and the puffs do 4 hearts of damage. Ice falling from the sky does 2. You don't want to get hit by one of those, but it wouldn't be fatal if it does happen.
We need all 8 fire rod shots here to melt the ice, and then we'll see what quick kill option he goes for. All of them start with a spin to put him towards the corner. Looks like he actually executed the first 2 phases, yeah, very well. So
yeah, really good fight.
Very nice cleanup.
Yeah, as you can see, the strat there is to keep all 3 puffs right next to each other, right on top of each other, so that all your attacks will hit all of them. And Darkmind does a really good job of that there.
Yeah, I did not detect one particle of fear in his gameplay there.
Yeah.
Kohrek mission with fence dash. I know how much you care about the fence dash.
I know, it's very... It's a key strat, you know, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the run.
Sure does.
I'm sure both of these runners are very, very upset that they didn't pull it off properly.
Oh, especially with you watching them.
Yeah.
DMD done with Ice Palace. Mr. Rona, well, actually, he's not going to be running any errands here. Some players do, but he won't be. He's going to be heading straight to Swamp while Kohrek is entering the Skull Woods. Going from Dungeon 5 in the intended order to Dungeon number 2 marks a stark decrease in the dangerousness of the dungeon, but Swamp Palace is famous for having a lot of fairly minor but consequential RNG that can be very difficult to mitigate the consequences of.
Yeah. It is really interesting once you get to this point in the run, because, you know, you're in Ice Palace where you're supposed to get the blue mail, and there's a big skip with the bomb jump that we do. So, you know, the enemies do a lot more damage, and the tech is a lot more difficult and important because you can lose a lot of time depending on if you die or you mess up the bomb jump. And then you go to Swamp Palace where the enemies do pretty much light world damage, and there's no crazy tricks or anything. It's just, it's almost like desert in the sense where you just kind of make your way to the necessary rooms and collect keys and the items.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's even a fair amount of backtracking. There's a few rooms that you see, I think up to 4 times you go through some rooms in 2 different directions. Which makes it nice and exciting. It's like driving through Nebraska. It's like the same thing over and over and over again.
So Darkmind is only at 1 bomb, and in a couple rooms ago there was a backup bomb there, but he's also very low on arrows, so he'll most likely be waiting for the resupply room, which is towards the end of the dungeon, to get the bomb and the arrows there.
Yep, he'll consolidate those 2 pickups. Kohrek coming up through the torch room here. A couple magic drops under pots means there's plenty of magic to kill all the enemies, make the room a lot safer. May opt to heal here. Yeah, he's going to do that. The Moldome gave him good RNG, so he was able to do that safely and be able to get into Mothula with a very high hard count.
Ooh, Sword Beam's giving him a little trouble killing this mummy, though.
Yeah, I really loved Sword Beams when I played this as a kid, but as a speedrunner, unfortunately, sometimes when you try to slash enemies with Sword Beams, the beams do half as much damage, or a quarter of as much damage as the level 3 sword. Wow. Really good fight there from him.
Really good
Didn't need those
fight.
hearts at all.
I've never seen the fight go that way, but that was a really, really good fight.
A fast fight where he killed him sideways at the bottom of the room.
Yeah, that's very rare.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. But yeah, as he said, it's funny because the Sword Beams, most people, they love using them in casual playthroughs, but there are so many instances in speedruns, like Blind, for instance, where it kind of messes up the flow of the fight. Can make it get a little bit out of sync. So
yeah, for sure.
Generally, we don't like to use Sword Beams in the speedrun.
Yeah, generally. There's a few places where it's useful just as a ranged option to hit a switch or something.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, it makes combat a little more difficult.
So far, Darkmind is having a pretty clean Swamp Palace. He has lost 1 heart of damage, and like we said, this is kind of a boring, almost like a lame segment in the run because everything does so much less damage than you've gotten accustomed to, and there's no tricks or anything. But the way you lose time in this dungeon is, having to react to all the RNG and maybe getting hit here and there because there's just so many enemies in each room, and they're hard to all, to keep track of all of them at once.
Yeah, it's real easy to get complacent, I think, in this dungeon and lose a lot of time without really even noticing it as you're playing, just because you feel so comfortable.
So in order to hook to this pod on the right that Dark Mind just hooked to, it's actually pixel perfect, but there's a very, very easy setup, and you'll see runners get that pretty much every time because the setup is almost automatic, and it's also very close to the optimal movement you're going to do anyway.
There's the first arrow backup that DMD just got there. Using a trick to time his dash there to make sure that he goes through that jelly as soon as it stops electrifying.
Now, I believe you want, I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you want 20 arrows coming out of this dungeon optimally.
Having more than that is fine. I mean, if you want to assume that you use exactly 8 on Vitreous, having 21 will leave you with 13, and you only need 1 arrow pickup to have 18 for Ice Armos. But it's often better to use 1 or 2 on Vitreous to get the 0 lightning, but it's also possible to use as little as 7 in some circumstances with a cute trick to finish off the final eyeball with only 7 arrows. I'd like to come out here probably with 22 or 23 just to give me a little bit of leniency on Vitreous, and so only have to get 1 pickup afterwards for Turtle Rock.
Right, and we have Dark Mind going for the 0 cycle, but he gets a little bit unfortunate RNG there, gets charged, and actually has to drop the technique, so he gets the standard 1 cycle, but he does finish off the fight with a clean, quick kill on the second phase, which saves about a second for what a lot of runners do, which is just spin him twice. So pretty solid fight there for Dark Mind.
Yeah, if you're able to get the 0 cycle, that's like an additional 6-second time to save. But because the cycle length is so long, the difference between a 0 cycle and a optimal 1 cycle is a huge window of execution. So you can go for the 0 cycle and mess it up pretty bad and still get an optimal 1 cycle, or just go for a 1 cycle, and the outcome is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So if you have fair consistency with the 0 cycle, it's pretty reasonable to just go for it. And then just recover if you make a mistake and end up with the same exact outcome as if you hadn't gone for it at all.
Yeah, there were actually a lot of runners that were opposed to you even going for 0 cycle, but you see it a lot more now just for the exact reason you just said, because if you practice it enough to get decent at it, you are probably good enough to still get the 1 cycle if you mess it up.
Mm-hmm. Alright, Kohrek coming into Ice Palace. He lost half a heart on the overworld. I don't expect that when it's going to be terribly consequential. He, of course, does have the powder, so if it does have a rough dungeon, he will have the option to heal before Cold Stare. DMD looks like he's blocked there, but I think if he dashed a few more times, he might actually get through. We were thinking about slope physics, the way they move you. Sometimes the movement is different. So sometimes when you appear to be blocked by squirrels, if you just keep dashing into them, one time out of a few, you'll get through. It's rare, but I would do it. I would just keep dashing, just in case.
Yeah, and there's no harm really, because it's not like they hurt you when you bunk into them when they're rocks. So we see Dark Mind going a little bit out of his way to look for a fairy in that bush.
Yeah, the north, south, and east bushes there can drop a fairy.
Yeah. Well, depending on, like you said, there's a bush prize pack, so they can also drop hearts, I believe, as well, right?
Yeah, those ones have a random. It's a randomized pack. Those 4 specifically have a 1 in 8 chance for a rupee, a heart, or a fairy, and a 5 in 8 chance of nothing.
Oh wow, that's good to know. I don't think I've ever gotten a rupee out of those, so that's really interesting.
Really? Well, you probably have, but it was so pointless you didn't notice it.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe my mind just completely ignored the fact that it gave me a drought.
Yeah.
Bad RNG with the bush card there.
Yeah. Yeah, you really don't want to take any damage before Maya. That's actually why he went so far out of his way to even try to get healed on Death Mountain. Getting the Ice Rod and the Ether Medallion do carry some risk, but just getting both of them before Maya, because that's the standardized route.
We saw some cool spin speed swag there from Darkmind after he got the Ice Rod too. Activating it right after he got the Ice Rod and using the stairs there to get out of that room. Roughly, I'd say a quarter of a second faster, or half a second faster.
If your movement is good, you can save a little time that way.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is just because you gain so much speed moving diagonally on stairs, on wide stairs, when you do have that glitch activated.
Alright, Kohrek going in the cold stair now, so let's see how this goes. He's got full hearts. He did use the powder to refill his hearts on the ferry in a couple rooms before this. But like we said, this fight can be pretty tough. And wow. Ice block lands on him right as he's about to spin cold stair, so the fight gets away from him immediately.
Yeah, he's gonna have to be chasing down every single one of these. I do like the option to use spins because the radius is completely around Link. It does affect your mobility though, but you don't have to worry about whether they're in front of you or behind you or getting surrounded if you do keep your sword out, charging spins, and then wait for him kind of to come to you.
This is making me so nervous. Man. He is down to 2 hearts, and any ice block will kill him. Any damage at all will kill him now. So
he's got 1 down, 2 down. The other one is damaged.
Gosh.
It's a little bit easier when there's only 1 left. This one doesn't appear to have a lot of HP left, though.
There we go. Wow. Okay. Kept his composure, stayed calm, dodging the ice while also getting as much damage as possible. Puffs up. So this, given that it went awry so early, that was pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. This is actually one of the boss fights where you can actually die after you kill the boss, because of those ice blocks will continue to hurt you. So even after you kill that last one, you have to continue to dodge afterward.
Darkmind getting 2 torches right now. 106.27 it looked like, 28.
Yeah, about
which is a benchmark we use when you're at this point in the run. There's almost exactly 20 minutes left, depending on your execution. So he's on very good pace still.
Yeah. If everything goes right, it's about 20 minutes. So every mistake you make, you kind of use that benchmark and kind of add to that.
Right.
Estimate your final time.
All right. So Kohrek, we'll see what he does here, because some runners will decide to do the collecting spree that Darkmind just did before Mire so they'll do it before Swamp to ensure that they'll have full hearts going into Mire, but it is a little bit faster to do it before Mire instead of Swamp.
Yeah, having to do with the bomb routes and the menus. The time save is negligible, but it is real enough for players to take the risk.
So he has the Ice Rod now, and I'm assuming he'll go get the medallion on top of Death Mountain as well. And like we said, a lot of enemies in Swamp don't do a lot of damage, so taking extra damage on the overworld is not as scary as if you took damage in the overworld of Mire.
Yeah, DMD is making his way through Mire here, a dungeon where you do have to intentionally take a lot of damage throughout the dungeon and on the boss fight. He took 1 more heart than he wanted to in the spike room. He was able to refill that one. Really, if Vitreous goes well, you're only taking 4 hearts of damage, so you only need to go in with 5 hearts at a minimum, ideally, but having a little additional cushion definitely doesn't hurt.
Cool little Samaria trick there, where you planned it early, and then shoot the block out, and then dash up to the room, or to the top of the room. Save a little time there.
Yeah, you can optimize blowing up doors and dashing into them by putting the bomb to the side, and then you can start your dash much earlier because you're already standing in front of the door. Using that last bomb also does auto switch to the fire rod, so you can hit the switch. Took him 2 tries that time, but you got it on the 2nd try. But also, setting that bomb so far off to the side can be a little risky when it's your last bomb, because if you set it a couple pixels too far, it won't actually blow up that door, and you're going to have to go find another bomb.
Yeah. Alright, so he's going into Vitreous right now. Like we said, 4 is optimal. Looks like he's already taken 2. Looks like he might end up taking 5 here. Yeah, ends up taking 5. Wow, gets that first arrow almost immediately when the hitbox opens up, and that's a very, very fast Vitreous fight right there.
Yeah. Yeah, he used a couple extra arrows, but he's going to need to get 2 additional pickups anyway. If he had saved 1 or 2 there, wouldn't have made any difference to how many he has to pick up afterwards. Kohrek's showing off a strange bonk effect there. When you block a race with the mirror and then bonk into any wall in any direction, you always get bonked to the north, even if you're dashing sideways. I'm pretty sure he was just showing that off.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to show us that cool trick there. And that actually brings up another good point that I rarely remember to mention in these runs, is that when you're using, or when you're pushing a block, if you use the mirror at the same time, then it'll erase the block, but it only works in certain rooms, because if you were to use the mirror in, say, a dungeon, it'll just have the normal effect of bringing you to the dungeon as well. So,
you know,
where the mirror actually...
I'm pretty sure it actually does erase the block, but then you reload the dungeon, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
And DMD is heading up to the last of the crystal dungeons. He's going to rescue a certain special lady at the end of this one, know her as Zelda. So for those of you that wondered who Zelda is in this game, it's actually that princess from earlier. Got to save her again. For some reason, we left the security of the most important person in the safety of the world under the protection of an old man in a church. Didn't see the flaw in that plan.
I mean, I don't know. It seemed like a good idea to me, but...
Yeah. This is the last time you ever have to deal with dead rocks as well, coming into this dungeon. And they might as well troll you a little bit right at the end.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a few screens on this overworld where they can be really frustrating. That being one of them, and the Waffle House before as well, but he fortunately got through that.
Yeah. We may see him try to do a super speed glitch by doing a Quake Dash. It works pretty much the same way as other super speeds, except there's a long animation in between activating the glitch and actually acquiring the speed. If he walks back down and touches the stairs, yeah, he's going to try to get that speed. He needs 1 bomb in this dungeon. He's going to pick it up right at the beginning. There's another bomb at the end, and there are other backup options in other places, but picking one up in Turtle Rock will be the fastest option for him. We also do know that he's going to have his fairy drop in Turtle Rock because of prize pack information earlier. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to get those arrows. They're going to despawn. Probably sad to see him go.
Yeah, especially like you said, he's so low on arrows, and that would have helped save him a couple seconds from having to pick up one of the backups.
Right. We'll see him do a damage boost on this roller. He's a little slow there, so he's going to have to take the damage boost really low and walk through the second roller. If you're able to get lower in the room before taking the damage boost from the first roller, you're able to dash through the second one. But he was well aware of the situation he was in and reacted exactly as he was supposed to. First opportunity for him to get a fairy drop is going to be in this room, right before the chain chomps. It's a great place to get it, but there are a few other opportunities for safety. Poke that pokey. You don't want to poke the pokey. But he did get the fairy, did get the key. We'll see him use those sword beams in the chomp room.
Showing off use of the sword beams, and most people will use the Cane of Samaria there, but the sword beams, if you can use them properly, they speed up that room pretty significantly.
They do save time
for
and magic,
yeah.
But because they're ready to get the full magic drop, the magic save isn't as significant. But the main downside is that the hitbox of the sword beam is much wider than the Cane of Samaria blast, which means that if a chomp is even in the vicinity, it's much more likely to end up blocking the sword beam compared to the Samaria block. Kohrek, he's been having kind of a shaky swamp so far. High on arrows and bombs, he won't have to pick up any backups in this dungeon. But he may pick up a couple extra hearts before Argus just for a little extra safety. Another unique sword beam strat that we're going to see from DMD. Probably he's going to hit this switch with a sword beam. By dashing so far past it and then walking up the last little distance, you actually do a more efficient dash movement and save a little time that way. And we'll see if he can keep his full hearts, because there are a few other places where beams are helpful. In the worst RNG in the Poke Room, avoiding getting hit by the fireball And catching the second one before he got too far off to the left. Being able to pass the fireball shooter on the bottom and stop that guy from moving too far requires pretty tight execution of the room. And we may see an additional sword beam shot from him while Kohrek is working on Argus, going for a 1 cycle. Did get those hearts, so he does have a little more safety. Probably a good thing he did get those hearts, because he did a couple hits of damage there. Less risk in the second phase, though, for taking damage. The most he could take is 2, so even if he does get hit once, he'll still be safe. Going for the quick kill.
Ooh, he got hit when the Argus was actually flying up the room. And he's got
the game doesn't really have a good Z-axis.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of moving the Y-axis when he's supposed to be gaining altitude. So that was very close. That was really scary.
Yeah. Ends up finishing with just a half a heart before collecting that heart container. So glad that he got through that cleanly.
DMD went for the fast laser skip, but he got the fast frame roll from the beetle there. He did have 12 hearts, nearly full magic coming in here, so he's in a pretty healthy position. So these mistakes aren't going to put him at risk of dying or anything. Just a little time lost there. King Dash, very cool strategy.
Yeah, and actually pretty uncommon, even top runners.
Yeah, I think it was more standardized, I think, but people are realizing that it's actually not a huge time save, or even much of a time save at all, compared to a much easier strategy that also picks up a bomb. So you're able to skip the bomb pod at the beginning of the dungeon, do an easier and almost identical strategy in that room, identical speed-wise, and get your bomb that way to compensate for the tiny time loss that is available there. Trying next, not a terribly difficult fight. Without any ice on the floor, it usually goes pretty smooth. Second phase, he's in a great position here to just, he could just comfortably wait for him to receive. The position and timing from which you release the spin to do the double spin at the beginning of the second phase determines where you're going to be standing as he charges at you to get that final hit. And his positioning was very good there.
And as we said before, Kohrek decided to go on his collecting spree before going into Swamp, so he just goes directly to Mire now. It's no problem getting there with full hearts. So that makes, like we said before, that makes this dungeon a little bit easier. Oh, and he goes for the bird carry. Not quite bird toss. A little variation of which where you nurse the bird back to health and then he disappears.
Yeah, I think what happens is he actually eats the bird, or he gets all the way inside. He's able to one-cycle the Wizrobes in the second room there.
Yeah.
Good RNG from the Popo as well, makes a fast finale to the room.
Yeah, and that room is the one of the big reasons that you want sword beams going in. If you don't get the quick kill, or the one cycle from the Wizrobes, you only lose a couple of seconds, but it is nice to have sword beams because it makes it a little easier to do so.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Dark Mind going into Ganon's Tower now, which is a lot of people don't like it, but the more experienced runners do like it because it's just fun. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to keep track of, but there's nothing that's too crazy risky. It's just it's a dungeon that kind of keeps you honest. You know, if you don't have really tight execution, then you're going to lose time here and there, and you might be in jeopardy of dying later on. But yeah, it's when you execute a clean Ganon's Tower, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think people who really enjoy a challenge really like this dungeon. I mean, that spike skip he just did right there, it's almost invisible to a non-experienced runner, but it's like a third of a second saved, and it's like just a few frame window to do it. And the time lost for missing it is real as well. So it's a lot of tiny optimizations throughout this entire dungeon. Lots of small variations to strategies with potentially tiny time saves, but huge difficulty differences. And that's why I think people who really like a challenge do love playing this dungeon. A lot of people, though, I would say, get a bad taste in their mouth from losing runs to this dungeon and maybe don't like it. But people like you know, who only practice and never do runs, you never have to worry about that.
Well, Yeah, it's really fun to practice in that regard because pretty much every room in the dungeon has some sort of tech that needs to be practiced. And one thing I did want to note about Eddie throughout the run is his movement is very, very smooth and clean, especially in instances where you might wait an extra half a second, like if you're pushing a block or something like that, or if you're flipping a switch. So it is really fun watching him in certain instances because he always goes for that optimal movement. He's always trying to push the block and then instantly be moving away.
He's going for the Yuzuhara Ice Armor strategy. He's actually going to run out of arrows because he shot one the wrong way. He has one for this one. They have 48 HP and arrow does 16 damage. Sword beams are actually stronger, or yeah, they're actually stronger than the. No, they're the same strength as the Temper Sword. That's right, but they're actually stronger than the Master Sword. Weird damage values for Armos there. But if you are using the Temper Sword, you do not want to do pokes because pokes do half damage. You want to definitely do slashes and spins, or use the sword beam. If you're doing a boss rush, for example, use your sword beams on Armos to save your ammo.
My favorite room in the game.
Mimics.
Wow, that was fast.
Mimics one. Yeah, almost fast. Too fast. Almost hit the spike. Oh man.
So really good mimics too as well.
Yeah. Mimics one is a lot of people will say it's the hardest individual room to optimize in the whole game, and I'm inclined to agree that it's at least in the top few, if we're not counting boss fights.
Yeah, boss fights, there's so much RNG involved as well. So mimics, there's no RNG. It's everything is fully controlled by the player, which is cool.
Yeah. You have no excuses if it doesn't go like that.
Yeah.
Coming into the gauntlet is DMD while Kohrek is fighting Vitreous. Looks like a pretty good first couple phases there. Took a few extra slashes, but I don't. He's going to get one lightning.
Yeah, very, very tail end of that. He gets the lightning.
Yeah, barely did. DMD handled that RNG really. Blunt Bunny strat. Yeah, the gauntlet has some really potentially consequential RNG, but we're learning new tech, and we're coming up with new ideas to mitigate certain patterns. So we'll just have the fire rod early for when one of those blue Zazzies goes north is an example of that.
Who unfortunately gets the first landmo going left, which makes it very, very difficult to fire rod him, which is what you want to do optimally in order to kill them quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be a 3-cycle.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a 4-cycle. I think this is worse than his Lamola's 1.
Yeah. What made it tough was the first one went left, and then the second one went right, so it was just he couldn't get in position to get the fire rod shots off.
Yeah, and by missing those shots, I think it actually threw off his timing, and that's what caused him to miss the third one in the first cycle as well.
You can actually tell when a Land Molus 2 fight goes bad based on how much magic you have. If you have almost half of your magic left, then you know that it's not a fight. It's
funny, having more magic it means it went bad.
Yeah, because if you do miss certain fire rods and you have to hit them extra times, you just opt for the sword spin because it's easier to time.
Oh, going for the Waffle House drive-through and actually executing it extremely well.
That was awesome.
That's a hard screen to do like that.
Not many people go for that even at a high level, so
yeah,
that was really cool to see. That's a very, very difficult screen.
Right, DMD only has one key, which means he's going to have to pick up an extra one. Skipping the Helm of Swords means he'll be picking it up from the chest in the following room. He'll get a heart and full magic in the same strategy that he uses to pick up the chest. Then he'll go on to Moldorm 2. Moldorm 2 Arena, I think a lot of people agree is a little easier than the first one. But also having a stronger sword makes it almost too easy.
Wow. Eddie coming very close to the edge of that ledge there. And I think he did use a sword spin, like the tech we spoke about on the bomb jumps.
Yeah, that's such a fine optimization to make sure he's on the absolute bottommost pixel there, just so that hookshot distance is as short as possible. Considering you move 4 pixels per frame with the hookshot, I don't know if 1 or 2 or 3 pixels lower actually saves time. But the lowest pixel might actually be right on the threshold between 2 frames of movement, so maybe it does. Aghanim 2 has a lot of RNG. Best you can do is a 2 cycle, but that is RNG dependent as well as execution dependent. Some patterns are really bad. He's got 2 hits on the first and 1 on the second. Looking for lineups. He's looking for lineups on 1 axis at a time. I do prefer looking for lineups horizontally, because that way you don't have to worry about the division of a blue ball interfering with your ability to hit him. Yeah. But when the shots desynchronize, or even synchronize too much, that can actually prevent you from being able to handle them properly. Kohrek looked like he was very close to opening the wrong chest there.
Yeah, but he decides to actually go for the mirror strat, just to get out of that room without having a damage boost, or just try to awkwardly wait for the spike rollers there too, which is something that you'd see more often than you'd think. The mirror strat there. Right,
yeah, well, he knows he isn't going to get the fairy in this dungeon as well. Well, at least we know that. Assuming that he knows prize packs, he'll know that too. So saving those 3 hearts can be a big deal. All right, D&D using the first 2 phases of Ganon.
Chomps are so tough, yeah. An RNG point here that I like to point out on Ganon is because a lot of people always focus on the blue balls for Aghanim, but if you get a lot of extra warps coming out from Ganon here, you can lose a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. There is no upper limit to the amount of warps that you can get. Right.
So in each warp costs, I think, like 1.5 to 2 seconds, depending on where he warps to and from.
Yeah.
So.
Also, I guess what might be worth noting is he messed up Ice Armor so bad that his fire bats in the second phase were actually not traditional, and that could have messed him up with some patterns. But he was fine dodging. Yeah, Kohrek got down to low hearts, but he's using the fairy to heal up from those anti-fairies there. And Darkmind Demon's on the last phase again in here. He's going to be looking for 3 hits every time he lights that torch from here on out. And I don't suspect we're going to see him make any huge errors from here. Some warp positions can be very difficult to get those triples.
The triples are the optimal way, the most you can get when you have the torch glitch, and like you said, it can be pretty tough depending on if he goes to the far corners of the room to keep up that rhythm of 3, but it doesn't look like he dropped 1 at all, so he's going to finish up here and just under a 127, I believe.
Yeah, that 126 prediction from earlier, unfortunately, he made a few errors since then. Yeah, it's going to be a very high 126.
Yeah, and his official speed racing time in the race channel is a 127 flat. Nice. Once he had done in there, so very solid race from Darkmind. Like I said, he's a lot of fun to watch because he does everything so tightly. He always goes for fastest strats.
Yeah.
In terms of, like I said, optimizing, pushing things, and making sure he's not going too far left or right. He keeps his movement very tight, so really, really solid execution from him there.
Yeah, he when he was progressing throughout this game, and even still at the level that he's at, he was always a person who was always willing to learn new things. You know, anytime a new thing was found that might help him, or anytime he had a strategy that just doesn't work, or becomes aware of a new optimization, he's always willing to continue to develop his gameplay and his run throughout his whole career. And I want to say that that's maybe an attribute more typical of younger players. Us older players maybe get a little bitter and stubborn in our ways. He's one of the young guys in the scene.
Yeah, this run definitely has a way of breaking you, just with all the RNG and all the weird, strange things that can go wrong that are really impossible to predict. But it can be hard to just kind of keep your head down and keep optimizing things here and there, just little aspects. So that's kind of what separates the top runners from anyone else. It's just that propensity to just keep plugging away at these optimizations and learning new things.
Yeah. All right, Kohrek, he did skip that magic drop. You may think that it would have been worthwhile to get it because he's so low on magic, but there is a guaranteed free magic drop in the next room he's going to pick up anyway. He'll be coming into try next. going to do the fight from the bottom. I believe we saw DMD do the fight from the top. As we like to call backdoor Trinex, because you fight him from his back, obviously. Doing it from the bottom isn't technically a huge amount slower. You can maybe get one less attack cycle when you have bad patterns. But the worst thing that could happen, of course, is if you're a little bit slower and the ice gets put on the floor. When you're on the bottom, that can make it very difficult to kill the ice head. But if you're on the top, you pretty much avoid that entirely. Real clean second phase. When Trinex is so close to a corner like that, I do find it difficult sometimes to get that spin off and be in a safe position to get that last slash. But I was able to do it just fine.
Yeah, solid stuff there from Kohrek, showing off the front door strats.
And there's Zelda and that crystal there. She's like, dang, what took you so long?
Yeah. It took you an hour and 25 minutes from the last time I saw you? What the heck?
So where does she go now? Do we put her somewhere safer this time? I think she's in our pocket, technically, in our tunic.
All right, so Gan's Tower once again for Kohrek here.
Yeah, very fun dungeon. I do like it. I have lost the occasional run to Ganon's Tower, but I haven't become too bitter about that since I do spend more time just practicing than doing runs.
Yeah.
Like you.
Yeah, practicing is way more enjoyable than actually playing the game, so I try to preserve my sanity by just loading up the practice hack instead of the actual the actual game.
All right. Did he get that first key on the torch, or did he skip that? I guess he must have skipped it, right? Because he only has one. So we'll see him probably get the same key as DMD. I didn't mention it before, but if you've been watching a lot of these races, you probably heard somebody mention it. But there are 3 keys, of which you only have to pick one. They're the 3 slowest keys in Ganon's Tower. The first one, the easy, obvious, safe one, is the torch key, immediately downstairs. But the 2 near to the end are faster than that one as options. So you'll see most players get one of those. Most of the higher level players will get one of those. He already has enough arrows to kill Armos, but the next arrow pot is free. Doesn't have to go out of his way at all to get an additional 5. So if he does have a little bit of a rough time there, plenty of arrows to use as backups to clean it up.
Yeah, you actually very rarely see people with enough arrows to skip one of these backup 10 arrows. They'll either get the chest in the bottom right of this room, or they will get the chest after you get the big key. And that saves a little bit of time too.
Just walked into that anti-fairy. He did have powder. He could have opted to kill it. The hearts lost, they're kind of bad, but the magic loss might even be more significant.
And he ends up having a very clean Armos fight, so he won't have to worry about any variance in the fire bats later on Ganon.
That's right, with 3 arrows he couldn't kill all the mimics, but if he gets very lucky, he could get an arrow drop in the first one. He skipped that chest.
Not
something I would recommend going for in a run.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Picks up the magic you lost from the anti-fairy.
Yeah, that's good knowledge and awareness there. I think there's actually 2 magic pickups you can get there. There was some old conventional wisdom where you used extra magic early in this dungeon sometimes. based on some RNG, I think. And you would do a different strategy in that room that picked up both magic pots. Super weird. You'll never see it today. I'd have to actually like look into it to recall the exact circumstance there.
Ooh, Kohrek going down the right side of that room, which you don't see often. Most runners going down the left side because it's, I guess the timing is slightly easier to dash down through there.
Yeah, it's weird how things just line up perfectly sometimes in this game. If you just happen to execute the first part of that room just right, you can just barely squeeze by like 2 or 3 spikes on the way back down.
Ooh, goes for the long-range arrow snipe on the skeleton on the left. Just barely misses, but still cleans up the room pretty quickly.
A few players do that.
Wow, another long-range snipe.
Oh, that one hit though. Nice.
Yeah, that was awesome.
If you know me well, you may know that I do not teach those strategies in my lessons, but some players do like them.
And Kohrek showing off how using the sword on ice can actually cause you to accelerate and get your speed up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and when doing that, the most important thing to maintain your speed is to change direction only when you're performing an action like slashing, and to only change direction between 2 different diagonals.
Yeah, that's something that Darkmind tried to show off during his version of the Ice Armos fight before, which is, I'm pretty sure it's reliant on that diagonal movement like you were just explaining, and speeding yourself up to get in position.
Yeah, I think you have to pick up a little momentum from the first few arrows that you shoot, and then use that to kind of throw yourself into the upper corner.
Yeah. Very, very difficult strat that is rarely attempted. I think he's the only one who actually...
The only currently active runner.
Yeah, that has practiced it enough to be comfortable attempting it in a run.
Yeah, I think there's a few other players that know how to do it, and that can maybe do it, you know, with moderate consistency, but the penalty for messing that up in a run, having to recover on Ice Armos, is just such a potentially huge deal.
Yeah.
Not really worth the risk for a lot of players.
He's going to get out his powder now. He's going to pick up these fairies, get himself to full health before heading into the last 3 boss fights of the game.
Yeah, a little boss gauntlet.
Starting off with the easiest one here.
Should
Unless
be the
he gets
easiest.
trolled. Yeah. Like you said, it's really interesting, the refight of Moldorm here, because the first 2 have some sort of element that makes it tougher, whereas that one, the platform's a little bit easier to manage and you have a better sword, so...
Yeah.
Definitely, I assume most people would agree that it's easier than the first fight.
Yeah, for sure. And even in a casual playthrough, you'll probably have like the cape or the cane of burnout or something, and the gold sword, They should have put, I don't know, like 3 or 4 Moldorms up there, and like conveyors and like 6 or 7 BMOS, maybe.
I wonder if that's been done in a ROM hack or something.
Well, no spoilers, but
oh man, just barely mistimes that.
You know what, he was probably holding the down button and started just mashing B. Sometimes when you do that, you don't change direction. You just keep slashing the same direction you're already facing. Usually because of a little lag or something.
Not a bad fight, though.
Yep. Gonna be going into Ganon with 11.5 hearts and full magic.
And here we go. Just a couple of minutes on this Ganon fight.
That's right. Gets that cheap shot before Ganon even starts talking. Now, how do you even know this guy's a bad guy before he even starts talking? maybe he would be your ally if you didn't hit him that first time.
Link fights dirty, man.
Going for these dashes. He is going to get a traditional bat pattern because he did have a good ice armless fight. Which means the dodging is going to be a little more predictable.
Nice. Uses the invincibility from the hook shot there to get away from those fire bats.
Yeah. Sometimes you plan that, and sometimes it's we can say the word reaction, but the word panic might be more accurate.
Yeah.
I've been in those situations where the only thing I can do is just mash Y and hope for the best.
Oh man, Ganon is just not wanting to stay put here.
No.
And this is what I was talking about before, these extra warps. It's pretty common to just get maybe 2. But Ganon can just go on sprees where you get 10 or more and you're losing like
when he
20
keeps warping
seconds.
back and forth to the same position, that means that not only is the RNG flipping a 50-50 coin, but also a 1 in 4 chance to land in the same position.
Yeah.
And me and some of the other ROM hackers have considered that there may actually be a bug in the Ganon code that we haven't identified specifically that causes the RNG value to get stuck. Which there may be some way to break it if you notice that you're getting that kind of a pattern.
That would be really interesting if that were found, because then I feel like that would change the way people approach Phase 3 entirely, and maybe even Phase 4.
Yeah, well, we know there's something that we don't understand about Ganon's code because he checks your position relative to him too much to not be affected by that. So we just can't figure out. It's like the worst code ever written. So.
Yeah. Hey, video games weren't, really common work back then, so.
Well, I don't know as much about that stuff, but sometimes the ROM hackers will say stuff like, you can tell which parts were written by the interns. And I'm like, I have no idea. I can barely read any of this crap.
Kohrek's getting a little low here.
Yeah, he's very near to the end of the fight.
There you go.
Yeah, finishes him off.
So, GG to Kohrek.
Yeah, unfortunately, he had a little bit of a rough run, even from pretty early on. It was really the Tower of Hera, I think, that kind of set the pace there.
Yeah, other than that, it seemed fairly clean from him. He
really
died
did.
at Tower of Hera, he fell at the bomb jump, he fell at Moldorm, so... I mean, that's a few minutes right there that if he was able to pull that off cleanly, this would have been a very good run for him compared to his PB.
Yeah, and there were a lot of cool stuff in there. I mean, the Waffle House drive-through is something that I've done. I've practiced it, and I can't even get it like 10% in practice.
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm very impressed by stuff like that.
And it takes good RNG too to get through there. So just having the presence of mind to react to the RNG being good and knowing which path to take is pretty impressive.
For sure.
Flashes of brilliance for sure. Moments that he just got really unfortunate RNG at times too. So
yeah.
Just an up and down run for him.
Yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes. Unfortunately, when we're doing these races, you don't have the opportunity to just reset when you make a mistake and try again. You really have just one try, and there might be some ups and downs. It's just the way it goes.
All right, we're going to pull Kohrek in here to join us for just a minute as we wrap this up. Kohrek, GG. We weren't joined by Darkmind, but definitely enjoyed you coming in here. Just, are there any points in the run to start off with that stuck out in your mind, good, bad, or otherwise?
I mean, it's really hard to keep your head in the game after you would have reset after Hera. You know what I mean? So yeah. I mean, it was fine. Really, after Pod, like, it's not like it was a great run after Pod, but it wasn't a bad run after Pod. So it was all right.
Well, I was just mentioning that if you add up all the unfortunate things that happened in Hera, you're actually right around your PB. So other than Hera, your run really wasn't terrible. You had a pretty solid run overall.
Yeah, I did finally get a gold GT. So
nice.
My sum of best is now 133, which is something I'm like not even close to with my PB. So I should probably try to grind that a little bit. But it's all good.
When you're 5 or 6 minutes away, or 5 or 6 minute difference between your PB and your sum of best, you know that you're bound for a PB soon. So I'm sure if you just gave it a few more attempts that you'd be able to drop that time significantly. So how did you manage to keep your head in the game after Hera? Because there were a few moments where you slashed your sword a couple extra times, and I definitely sympathize. I would definitely have, like you said, reset at that point. So was there something you did or anything to just keep yourself like, you know what, I just got to finish this up. I got to keep plugging forward and keep going with this despite all of the mishaps?
I mean, the good thing is that I came into this knowing my chances of winning this race were like less than winning the Powerball or something. So it really wasn't like I lost my chance, you know? So
yeah.
It was all right. I could just forfeit and everybody can watch D&D, which they're probably doing anyway, and it's fine. But let's just grind it out and get to the end here.
Yeah, Darkmind is a tough opponent for anyone, so definitely good mindset. But hey, you made it pretty far in this tournament. Getting into the bracket stage in and of itself is pretty cool, because that was pretty tight and pretty tough in certain groups. So congrats on making it here. It was cool to see you finish up that run, and congrats on that gold in G Tower as well. Were there any other comments you wanted to make before we start wrapping up?
No, just want to say thanks for everybody organizing the tournament, and thank you guys for the commentary. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. It's been a pleasure doing commentary with Flash Toby Crackett over here. His sultry bass tones and his knowledge of the game is unparalleled, in my opinion.
It was really nice to work with you again. It really has been a while. A couple of years, I think.
It's been a while since we've joined forces on anything, so it's definitely a lot of fun being able to talk about the game with you. So coming up, let me take a look at the schedule here. We have at 4 p.m. Eastern, which is just over an hour from now, we have Void versus Elminster RTA. And then later on tonight, we have an 11:30 p.m. race between Minis and SNES Chalmers. And I know those runners a little bit more than I know Void and Elminster, and I know that they are pretty evenly matched. And I know that I'm pretty sure they race a lot just to keep pushing each other, so that'll be a fun race. So make sure you guys tune in for those two races coming up. They will be on Speed Gaming 4 for Void and Elminster, and Minis versus SNES Chalmers will be on the Speed Gaming channel. Otherwise, feel free to take a look at the Speed Gaming schedule in general. There's plenty of runs coming up on all of the channels. Speed Gaming has content 2, 3, 4, even up through 5. There's races going on all day. We've got more NMG, as I just mentioned. There's a Link to the Past randomizer. There's Super Mario Odyssey. There's Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. So make sure you check out that schedule. And otherwise, I hope everyone enjoyed this race. Make sure you tune back in roughly an hour, and you'll see some more NMG action. So again, Kohrek, great run. Thanks for talking to us a little bit here. Flash Toby Crackett, thank you, and great job on the commentary.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join you. And thanks everybody, of course, for watching. And everybody who plays the game, of course. Thank those people for making events like this possible. Yeah,
real shout-outs to Greenham and Scrivo, who has been working tirelessly to make sure this goes smoothly, along with all the other help, all the other admins, and especially Fiesel and the Speed Gaming channel and community. This is it's been a really fun tournament to watch unfold, and we got some more competition coming up. So with that, I guess we'll cut. Thanks again, guys. Feel free to say any last comments, and again, thanks to everyone for watching.
I think you pretty much covered everything that I would have to say anyway, so just farewell, everybody.